All right, thank you, and welcome. Good evening. Welcome to this town hall meeting regarding the proposed residential treatment facility in North Snohomish County. Next slide. Some town hall norms. All meeting participants will be muted during this meeting. We ask that you please click on the link in the chat to ask your questions. Questions will be addressed at the end of the meeting as time allows. And if we cannot answer your questions during the meeting, we will have someone follow up with you. All right, this meeting is being recorded. A recording of the meeting and the slides will be posted on the HCA website within 2 business days of this meeting. Please do not disclose confidential information during the meeting that you do not want public. A quick review of the agenda. Dr. Carrie Waterland will be giving some background on this project. We will then do a facility program overview. The Winneha group will talk about who will run the facility. Corsmo at that point will then talk about the building and its function. Dr. Waterland will give us some words in summary, and then we will be on to our question and answer segment. Dr. Waterland.
Thank you, Blake, and welcome everybody this evening to the Town Hall. My name is Carrie Waterland. I'm the Division Director of our Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery at the Healthcare Authority for Washington State. Now, many of you may be wondering, why did we look at a community facility? Well, I can tell you that in May of 2018, Governor Inslee announced that he was going to pursue a plan to modernize and transform the state's mental health system. So part of this plan is to end civil patients being placed at our large state hospitals in favor of having individuals served closer to their home communities in smaller community-based facilities, as well as some community hospital capacity throughout the state. Next slide. So Western State Hospital and Eastern State Hospital will continue to focus on serving individuals who enter through the forensic system, individuals who need competency restoration services or who've been found not guilty by reason of insanity. They will also serve certain individuals with acute needs who are under a civil commitment order, while other individuals will be served in a facility such as this, in a community, through a combination of smaller, more cost-efficient state-run or state-contracted programs that will be dispersed throughout the state and in private community hospitals. Next slide. So Washington has and continues to change the way that we treat and pay for individuals with behavioral health needs. We are focused on treating the whole person, mind and body, and believe that behavioral health care is health care. This is an efficient way of achieving whole person health. We know that healthier people and communities lead to higher rates of employment and lower costs in areas such as the correctional system or overall medical spending. This helps to provide appropriate supports to individuals in their home community, their families, friends, and support systems. Next slide. Thank you. So this is part of a statewide effort that I talked about a little bit earlier to build community-based behavioral health capacity. I'm going to pass this off to Cara Panic to walk us through some of the specifics of the facilities, this one and others in the state, and the current availability of beds in Snohomish County. Cara.
Hi, I'm Cara Panic, and I'm the section manager for the Healthcare Authority's Adult Services and Involuntary Treatment section within the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery. The residential treatment facility proposed for Stanwood is not a new type of facility. There are similar facilities in many communities across the state. For the last 3 years, the Healthcare Authority has been contracting with residential treatment facilities and community hospitals for beds for people on 90 or 180-day involuntary treatment orders. Our state needs a continuum of services that can help keep people within their communities and help them on their road to behavioral health recovery. We've found that people do better when they stay connected to their friends, family, and home. Currently, Healthcare Authority has contracted for 6 beds of this type in Snohomish County. Next slide, please. So what is civil commitment? The state utilizes civil commitment laws to protect people who are experiencing severe and acute behavioral health symptoms. People in crisis may be evaluated by what's known as a designated crisis responder, or DCR, to determine if they are a danger to themselves, to others, to property, or might be gravely disabled, meaning unable to care for themselves. The DCR can detain a person to a treatment facility to evaluate their condition for up to 5 days. The treating facility may determine that more involuntary treatment is needed, and if so, a court order will be sought. Additional involuntary treatment would then be ordered for 14 more days. After that, additional treatment orders are for 90 or 180 days. Next slide, please.
Thank you. And this is a rendering of the facility. We do have this in here just as a slide for folks to look at because we're going to make this public to everybody. Next slide, please. So this facility will be licensed by the Washington State Department of Health as what's known as a residential treatment facility, or an RTF. The programming will be certified by the Washington State Department of Health as evaluation and treatment services. Individuals will transfer their care to this treatment facility when they are on the 90 or 180-day orders that Cara just talked about. And the goal for this facility really is to serve people from Snohomish County. This facility will expand the 6-bed capacity right now in Snohomish County. And Cara, I'm going to pass this back to you.
Okay. So next slide, please. So who will this facility serve? As we mentioned before, people will come to this facility when they are on a 90 or 180-day order for involuntary mental health treatment. Most commonly, individuals are placed in treatment this way when a loved one calls a crisis line or 911 and is connected with a designated crisis responder. Involuntary mental health treatment may be necessary when a person's experience of mental health symptoms becomes so intense that they are unable to take care of themselves. For example, there might be no food in their cupboards and the person might not be aware that they need to eat, or they might be suicidal or unable to distinguish reality from delusions. The designated crisis responder assesses whether the individual meets civil commitment criteria, and if so, the person is detained for up to 5 days. After that, additional involuntary treatment must be ordered by a judge for 14 days, then either 90 or 180 days at a time. Next slide, please. What kind of treatment will the facility provide? This residential treatment facility will provide mental health treatment. That would consist of psychiatric medication assessment, medication administration or management, group and individual therapy, peer counseling, milieu therapy. Treatment here consists of the inherent structure of following a schedule and having group interactions, as well as skills building, could be social skills, life skills, etc., and case management services. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Cara. So we did want to let folks know that these facilities will be secure facilities. So what does that mean? It means the facilities are locked and only accessible to individuals with approved access. An example of this would be a staff with a key card, folks that are allowed on the grounds who have access. Staff will be trained to manage aggressive behavior to maintain the safety of everyone in the facility, meaning the staff and individuals who are residing there for up to 90 or 180 days. The facility will be designed with safety and security in mind. The facility design and build will be reviewed by the State Department of Health for licensing. And again, this is to ensure safety. As a reminder, this is a facility to treat individuals and to ensure their safety, as well as individuals in the community and individuals who work in the facility. It should be noted that people living with serious mental illness are far more likely to be the victim of a crime than someone who is committing a crime. Next slide, please.
So what happens after treatment is complete? The standard practice for this kind of mental health facility is to begin identifying and planning what the person will need after discharge from the day of admission. The Healthcare Authority expects our contracted providers to create very complete plans to ensure that all the needs of the individual will be met when they return to their home or to a placement within the community. Discharge plans ensure that people have access to things like transportation, mental health treatment, medications, housing, medical services, and other things based on their individualized needs. Now we'll pass this over to Keith.
Good evening, folks. My name is Keith Baines. I'm with Winnehaw Group. There's my video. Winnehaw was hired by Tulalip tribes to represent them, and they're part of this project. And what exactly is that? If we can flip over to the next slide. So the state and the Tulalip tribes, the state of Washington Tulalip tribes, arrived at a settlement and a compact agreement in which the tribe agreed to develop this facility, develop, design, construct, and then turn the facility over. Within that compact, it is noted that there are 48 beds or less and a expenditure by the tribe up to $35 million. So in today's dollars, what that means is we're looking at a initial phase one of the project that consists of one 16-bed facility with the infrastructure to support a second facility. As the project is completed, the ownership of the building and the improvements will be transferred. Right now, the vision is that they will be transferred as a requirement of the compact to the Healthcare Authority in Washington State, who will then hire a provider to deliver the services within the facility. Right now, the schedule is tracking for the facility to be constructed and turned over and begin operations in 2024. And as I said, there is a potential second phase that could result in a second building in the future of another 16 beds on the same property. For those of you that have seen the conditional use permit applications, you can see the two building pads. And over to Evan and Jim on our design process.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Evan Haynes. I'm the pre-construction manager with Corsmo Construction. We're selected as a design build firm for the residential treatment facility. Corsmo's partnered with BCRA Architects to provide the pre-construction and design services for this project. So I just want to give everyone a brief overview of the project phasing and schedule. If you could go to the next slide, please. So this is an overview of the project site plan. The plan right now is to construct the facility to the south during phase one, and the building to the north, as Keith mentioned, that's closer to 300th Street, will be potentially in a future phase. So you can go to the next slide. We're planning to submit the building permit. Oh, back one, please. Yeah. We're planning to submit the building permit in May this year with a target for receiving building permit by December of 2022. The construction of phase one of this project would start first quarter of 2023 and will take roughly 16 months to build. And so the first phase would likely be completed in the second quarter of 2024. A couple of items to note in relation to the site. The on-site water and sewer infrastructure is being engineered to serve the needs of the proposed residential treatment facilities. The water service will be provided by a Group A community water well, which is designed and constructed in accordance with the Washington State Department of Health Office of Drinking Water Standards and Requirements. And the water system will be operated and maintained by a qualified satellite management agency, which has not been selected yet, but will be from the approved list of the Department of Health. The initial soil investigation confirmed feasibility of an on-site septic drain field, should provide adequate disposal of pre-treated sewer discharge from the proposed buildings. The system is being engineered and designed in accordance with Snohomish Health District standards and the requirements to serve the facility sewer needs. Finally, a traffic impact analysis has been conducted and found that the traffic impact will be minimal to the community. The majority of the traffic will be generated from staff coming to work and leaving at the conclusion of their shift. The project does include an 8-foot wide paved shoulder, the full width of the parcel, and vehicles exiting the parking facility will only be allowed right turns. Visitation is scheduled, and due to the fact that it's a 90 to 180 day facility, intakes occur at scheduled times and are significantly less frequent than that would occur with a shorter commitment. So now I'm going to turn some time over to Jim Walsh with BCRA. Thank you.
So I'm Jim Walsh. Good evening. We're the architects for the facility, working with Korsmo and Winnahaw for the Tulalip tribe. So this is a view of the exterior of the building. This is the front entry. The design is intended to have a residential character, so it'll be similar to other residential structures that are in the area. It has shed roofs, hardy panel siding and brick veneer, aluminum windows, and it'll have a metal roof. So can we go to the next slide? So this is the floor plan. So north is up. So there's kind of two main components to the project. There's a public and a service area, which is the north third of the building, and then everything south from the midpoint is a patient area. There are bedroom wings on your left and right. The project consists of, there's 10 single bedrooms and 3 double bedrooms. And there's a large common area. The patients are allowed to move about the facility, but the facility is locked, so they can't enter the public area or they can't leave the facility. So can we go to the next slide? So this is an interior shot looking at the kind of the common area that I just mentioned. And the facility is designed to support the treatment goals. So we're trying to create a healing environment that's also safe and secure. As part of creating this environment, we utilize a lot of natural light. There's a lot of glazing, natural materials, and we're trying to create a home-like environment so that people with mental illness can get treatment. So can we go to the next slide? So the building consists both areas that are social for group therapies, but also areas that are private for more individualized treatment and quiet. And this is a nature nook. It's a quiet area at the entrance to one of the bedroom wings, and it looks out onto a nature area. So this slide is what a patient bedroom looks like. So the bedroom, the single bedrooms have a private bath. There's a bed, there's a seating bench, a window. They have a desk and a wardrobe, and they also have a chalk wall so that they have the ability to personalize their room.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jim. And in closing, just wanted to, I know that we do have some questions, but hoping that I can provide just in summary that this is a 16-bed behavioral health facility that is focused on treatment and promoting recovery for the individuals that are residing there. The individuals that are residing there are experiencing symptoms of serious mental illness. Individuals in this situation do not enter the facility through the criminal legal system, and the safety and security of the community the staff, and those who require care are of the utmost importance to us. And with that, next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this town hall meeting. My name is Melissa Temke, and I am the Behavioral Health Communication Manager for the Healthcare Authority. So what I am going to do is help you facilitate through your many very great questions that you have. Just as a disclaimer, we are going to get through as many questions as we can answer at this time, but please know that our information continues to evolve. And so what I would suggest is continue checking the Residential Treatment Facility HCA webpage, continue checking the fact sheet that's updated, and reach out to the mailbox there if you'd like to be added to our Gov Delivery mailing list, as we will be sending out frequent updates there. So before we get to these questions, I do just want to read an excerpt that a resident of Snohomish County wrote in support of this facility, just to sort of get us with that thought in mind. So here we go. She says, please know that I advocate for this project and encourage the Snohomish County Hearing Examiner to support this facility. Many years ago, I may have been opposed to such a facility in my neighborhood because I had never experienced mental illness, nor had I experienced a family member with mental illness. I didn't understand. Then a loved one got sick. Now I have the Mukilteo Evaluation and Treatment Center, and I am thankful for it being there. It is only 3 miles away from my home. I have the lived experience of being a family member with a loved one who has had serious mental illness for over 20 years. A safe, secure facility close to home would have made all of the difference in their care. Snohomish County needs more psychiatric beds, including those for 90 to 180-day stays, as provided in this proposed facility. My loved one was once in Western State Hospital in Lakewood, Washington for 180 days. My late husband and I had to drive over 2.5 hours each way and stop for a meal, as there were no facilities for us to eat in the hospital. We only went once a month for half an hour, and the visit took up to 7 hours to get there and back. Our loved one was horribly isolated because he was so far away, and this isolation did not aid in his recovery. So that is one perspective for this facility. And with that, I am going to go right into the questions. This first question is going to be answered by Julie Brown with the Healthcare Authority. And it asks, where are you going to send patients that need medical attention? Are you going to send them to Cascade Hospital? They only have one locked secure room, limited resources, and no social worker on shift, and no patient sitters. Will you send them to Skagit?
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, folks. My name is Julie Brown. I'm a program administrator within the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery. So individuals that are in this facility must undergo medical clearance prior to admission. So what that means is the majority of folks, actually all of folks, will not have serious medical needs. In the case that an emergent medical need does arise, we plan to create agreements with a hospital nearby within the vicinity to serve those individuals. Transportation to that location will be secure, and a staff member will accompany the client to that facility. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Julie. This next question is for Brian, and it asks, will there be registered sex offenders participating?
Brian Wablinger, I'm the DSHS Chief Medical Officer, and I think the question, will they be participating? It's possible that there will be a sex offender at the facility, just as there are sex offenders in the community. For example, Everett has 147 sex offenders as of last count, registered. It is fairly unlikely that they will be in the program, but it's possible. They will not be participating in an outpatient basis. So this is not a sex offender treatment program. And so, not much more to say about that. It's just, it's a relatively rare occurrence in these type of facilities, but it's possible.
Thanks, Brian. That's really helpful. This next question is regarding the owner and operator, and I'm going to ask Evan Haynes to answer the question. The question asks, who will be the owner, operator, or person in charge of the adhering to the regulatory requirements associated with a Group A well? It's WAC number 246290. Will these people have the proper training as required?
Yeah, so I kind of briefly mentioned that the Group A well, community well system will be operated and maintained by a qualified satellite management agency that will be from the approved list on the Department of Health's website.
Thank you, Evan. This next one is about the nature environment that this facility will be in, and it's going to go to Jim. So the question asks, we have hawks and eagles that live here as well as other animals. I'm sure that environmental studies have been done, but is there any documentation available on what this will do to the wildlife of the lake?
So as a requirement of the conditional use permit, we've completed a SEPA checklist, and that has been turned into the county, and we're also undergoing the SEPA review. So the project will be reviewed by the State Environmental Protection Act.
Great, thank you, Jim. And State, don't go anywhere because this next question is for you as well. So the next question is...
Hang on, if I can here.
Yeah.
Jim, can you explain what SEPA is? That's an acronym. A lot of folks may not know what that is.
So it's the State Environmental Protection Act. And so it requires that projects, submit a SEPA checklist, which is a questionnaire that covers all of the environmental issues on the project. The checklist in the project is then routed to many state agencies, local agencies, tribes, local jurisdictions, and they have a chance to weigh in on whether they see an impact with this project.
Perfect. Thank you.
The county will adjudicate this, and they'll issue a decision.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for that clarification. So still stay on. So this next question is still about the wetland buffer. Is there a wetland buffer impacts and mitigation plan? And why has it not been made available to the public, or where can the public see this plan?
So we're still at a preliminary nature on the buffer mitigation plan. Our plan is that we're going to enhance the buffers, and that information will be available with our building permit submittal, which will be in early May.
Great, thank you. Okay, this next question is for Keith, and it asks to please explain why the public has only recently, during the first week of February, been notified of this project when it has been in the works since at least May of 2021.
So the project development feasibility, as I said, has been in process. And as we submitted for the conditional use permit, and that is the appropriate time to start to notify, which is what's happened. You've seen the postings up on the property since January. And I was there a week ago. They were still there, so I assume they're still posted, as well as the website that HCA's been made available, and other information such as this town hall.
Great, thanks, Keith. And as a follow-up to that, don't go anywhere. The next question asks if you can explain how you selected the site, the process, and provide information on if any alternative sites were considered.
So through the process, we did look, or I should say that we weren't involved yet, but as it went on, but there were other sites looked at in the region, in the Arlington and Monroe areas. Ultimately, this site was chosen because of the conditional zoning, conditional use zoning that exists for the property that does make this a feasible and use that is acceptable in the zoning, as well as the ownership status. It did not need to be acquired. It was already owned by the tribes. So those elements aligned with meeting the goals and the needs for both Tulalip and the state of Washington, and hence we arrived at utilizing this site for this facility.
Great, thank you. This next question is for Brian, and it's regarding de-escalation training of staff at the facility. And it asks, your staff will be trained in de-escalation tactics. Will you be training the community in these tactics as well? Or are we on our own to protect ourselves in any way that we can?
It's a great question. We will be training our staff. We will not be actively training members in the community. And the primary reason for that is it's extremely rare that we have any elopement from any of our facilities. And as Dr. Waterland mentioned earlier, it's much more likely that one of our clients would be the victim of violence than actually perpetrating violence. So while I understand the community's concern about mental illness and perhaps some misunderstanding of who we are actually serving, we do our best to keep everyone safe, our clients, our community, and provide the best care that we can.
Great, thank you. This next question is for Cara, and it asks, is the rehab facility next door going to be part of the step down or phase out exit plan? What is the plan when they leave? Where are they going?
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, no, there's not a connection between this treatment facility and the other facility that's adjacent to this property. The individuals who are going to be receiving treatment within this facility, as I talked about before, each one is going to have an individualized discharge plan that's going to be begun to be built from the day that they're admitted to the facility. So there's not an intent for them to transition to the other site. It'll be individualized based on each person's needs, but I would foresee that they would be returning to their home community, whether that's Stanwood, whether that's Everett, whether that's another community within Snohomish County, perhaps maybe somebody from Skagit County, or kind of moving out from there. But the idea would be that their discharge plan would connect them to their community provider, addressing whatever their needs were, which could include housing.
Great, thank you. And the next question is regarding the exact number of patients and buildings, and it's for Keith. And it asks, the posted notice calls out 2 buildings with 16 patients each. Other documentation states that 3 buildings with 16 patients each is planned, which is correct.
So the compact does identify up to 48 beds in the facility. And the available funding and as you see in the conditional use site planning information and what we presented here tonight, the current vision is, and what's being processed through this conditional use process is the initial phase 1 building, and then the future second phase 2 building, which would be another 16 beds. So the current answer right now is the 2 facilities.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is for Carrie, and it is regarding this facility and the patients at the facility. And it asks, if the goal is to have facilities such as this serve their local communities, why are patients from other Washington tribes and Alaska Natives being considered?
Thank you. Great question and good opportunity, I think, for us to do some clarification. This facility is really for Snohomish County residents. It will be focused on if through that process that Cara described, if a designated crisis responder really feels that someone meets criteria and goes through that process, this will be a place where Snohomish County will go initially. This is a place where we really are focused on serving Snohomish County. And if Snohomish County has all of the beds filled up by folks that are that are residents of the county, that is wonderful and great. If there are beds that are available, it may be that someone from in that region, in the region, kind of the surrounding counties, may be offered an available bed. But really, this focus is on Snohomish County and the residents of Snohomish County.
Great, thank you, Carrie. So the next question is actually regarding whether or not this presentation will be available online. And that's why I stalled there just a tiny bit. I'm going to answer it. The presentation will be available online. The best way to locate the presentation will be to go to the website Snohomish rtf@hca.wa.gov. And I'm just going to leave this up here a little bit so you guys can copy that down. And that is also where the recording of this town hall will be located. That will be up within the next 2 business days. These slides from this presentation will be up by tomorrow. So that is also a great place to get information. All right, so I am going to go and ask the next question, and this is for Keith, and it's regarding facilities changing their use. So the question asks, isn't it true that facilities often change their overall use from time to time?
So I'm not going to try to say what other facilities do or don't do, but I will say for this facility, part of the arrangement within the compact is speaking to the use. If the use of the facility is no longer needed, then the ownership of the improvements actually reverts back to Tulalip tribes. So while it's used for this purpose, it is owned and operated per the terms of the contract or compact, excuse me, by the state of Washington and HCA.
Great, thank you. Okay, this next question is for Jim, and it's regarding road improvements. Are there any road improvements besides these directly around the subject property? 300th is a 2-lane country road with no shoulder or walkway. Deep ditches line each side and limited sight distance. Any?
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Needed to unmute here. So we did talk about that in the presentation. The improvements that are included in the project are an 8-foot shoulder, the full width of the property, and the so that there's a single driveway onto 300th, and exiting the property, you'll only be allowed to make right turns out, heading. So you'll only be able to head to the east. So that's the extent of the traffic improvements that are currently planned.
Great, thank you. And this next question is regarding the patients, and it's for Cara. And the question asks, why do patients need to be treated close to their homes?
Yeah, well, what we found is that people do better when they can maintain their connection with their friends and their family. Those are the kind of informal social supports that people need often to do well, in their recovery in their lives. Another additional point is that, for people who have received ongoing mental health care, who suffer a setback and have involuntary treatment, for them to be closer to their outpatient provider, to maintain that connection for discharge planning, I think it goes a lot better for individuals. Just the more connected they can be to their home, the better they do. It creates less barriers for them to get back into the community.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is for Carrie, and the question asks what the staff to patient ratio will be.
Melissa, I'm going to throw you for a little bit of a loop and answer that one at the same time as, could we have you read that when the facility is ready to operate question as well? Because I think they go nicely together.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. So we had a great, So here's the first question regarding when the facility is operating, and then I'll go to the patient ratio. So the whole piece is when the facility is ready to operate, will certified and qualified behavioral health care and medical professionals be in place and ready to serve? And then what will the staff to patient ratio be?
Yeah, really, really great questions. So I'm going to give a couple different parts to this, though. I want to make it clear that the Healthcare Authority will be going out for a procurement to find a qualified behavioral health provider who has done this type of work before. As we've indicated, there are smaller facilities already that exist and do this work in Washington State. And so we will be really, really making sure that we are looking for and contracting with a provider who has provided services similar to this, who's shown a great track record. And so part of that will be that services provided in the facility are already, and in an evaluation treatment facility period, are already provided by licensed, certified, qualified behavioral health professionals, doctors, folks who are licensed through our State Department of Health. There may also be certified peer counselors. Cara talked through a couple of the services provided, and everybody that provides those services will absolutely have to have the qualifications and the certifications and the licensure in order to provide that level of service. As far as the staff to patient ratio, that's a little bit tough for us to answer today because there aren't any set prescribed staff to patient ratios because it always fluctuates on acuity, and you have to be responsive to the milieu and the needs of the individuals that are in front of you. And so that staff to patient ratio could change and decrease or increase depending on the needs of each of the individuals who are in the 16 beds. But part of the procurement process and part of us getting into a contracting relationship with a qualified behavioral health provider is to work out what that staffing pattern would look like and to ensure that we only contract with folks who really do provide a great proposal that meets the needs for safety and security and for treatment.
Great. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to put Evan on the spot. And this question is regarding adequate disposal of sewage. And the question asks, what constitutes adequate disposal of pre-treated sewage discharge? How will your drainage issues be handled? Great question.
Yeah. So what I can just say at this time is, we just moved through the feasibility phase, and we're currently working with a licensed septic engineer to design and permit an on-site sewage system. So the system's going to be designed and sized appropriately to be submitted to Snohomish County Health District to pass through their review and permitting process. The septic, another thing I can say is the septic system will be located in an area with proper setbacks. So.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Brian, and it is regarding safety. And the question asks, can you address the concern that parents have for the safety of their children, their neighbors' children, and their community?
And I believe there was an earlier question related to this at the very beginning.
Yeah, there was. It's kind of, I should have probably done them together.
And that one, I think they go well together because that one asks the additional question of what is the chance of a child might encounter an escaped patient. So I think it's certainly understandable that people have concerns about mental health facilities or really any other public facility being near a school. And we really care deeply about the safety of our patients, of the community, and of course, of children. I think this is two-part in that, what is the likelihood that they'll encounter someone? And related to my earlier statement, it's extremely rare. Elopements from our security facilities is rare because we have been in this business for a long time, and we know how to keep our buildings safe and keep our patients within the secure perimeter. The other part of that is most clients, when they are leaving, their goal is not to encounter anyone. Their goal, if they are going to leave, they're going away from people. They're usually not going towards people. So combining those two things together, I think it's extremely unlikely that children will encounter anyone who might escape from the facility. So this secure facilities, well-trained staff, unlikely that there will be any elopement. And most clients are going to head away from populated areas. And as I said earlier, most clients are more likely to be injured than injure someone else.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
So this next question is for Keith, and it's regarding location of the facility. And the question says, I'm a homeowner with within several miles of where the facility is being proposed. Has this facility been approved for construction already, or can another area away from residential homes be chosen?
So no, as Jim alluded to or noted earlier in the discussion, the construction permit portion will be submitted in May. The conditional use permit is currently with the county for the land use. And as far as resiting the facility, there's not another site, as I described earlier, that fits the criteria that we were looking for, or as well as this site. So the opportunities to resite are not there right now.
Okay, great, thank you. And this next question is regarding security, and it's for Jim. And the question says, what happens in the event of a fire or natural disaster? Will emergency exits exit to secure areas outside of the facility? Great question. For Jim.
Okay, yeah, this is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So so I'm not an expert in the operations, but I will speak to how these buildings are typically set up. So the building has a backup generator. So in the event of a loss of power, or where services are cut to the building, it does have a backup generator. So the patients will still they'll maintain in a secure environment, for the duration. So a couple things would happen. I mean, if there is a fire and the sprinklers activate, the staff will escort the patients out of the building, and the staff will be responsible for maintaining the security of the patients in that event. There are also, like, if it's a non-fire emergency, the building is designed that the patients can move from one part of the building to another part of the building. So it's not, unless there's an event that triggers sprinkler flow, the doors stay locked.
Okay, yeah, thank you. This next question is regarding release, and it's for Cara. And the question asks, am I hearing this correctly? These patients who are involuntary will be released into the Stanwood community potentially.
So what I would say is, if the individual who is receiving treatment within this facility came from the Stanwood community, then they would probably return to the Stanwood community. I think all discharge plans are going to be individualized and based on, the person's needs. They may return to their home where they were living prior to being hospitalized. We may be looking for a placement setting for them. We may be looking for housing for them. But because they're receiving treatment in Stanwood doesn't mean that they're going to discharge to and live in Stanwood if that isn't where they lived before.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to relocate people to Stanwood.
Thank you. And this next question is for Jim, and it's regarding traffic. And it's also regarding the shifts. So because right turns only will result in more U-turn, which is going to result in potentially more traffic, how many shifts will be coming and going at the facility?
So, I think what's stated earlier is the shifts will be determined by the operator, but I can say, we had to make some assumptions for the traffic report, and what we assumed was that there would be 3 shifts, so three 8-hour shifts, and then just another thing about the traffic. So this facility is an involuntary facility, so the patients don't have cars. And due to the length of stay, there's not a lot of coming and going. All the intake will be scheduled. So, relative to like, if you had a doctor's office, these facilities don't generate the amount of traffic, like a medical office building would.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you. And then the next question is for Keith, and it's regarding floor plans. Great question. Can these floor plans and land development plans be made available to the public?
So the conditional use permit is available. And also as we've said here, this presentation will be posted up on HCA's website within a couple days. So the information we're seeing here is or will be available shortly.
Great. And this next question is for Carrie. Why will there only be limited visits allowed to the person being treated? Isn't one of the basic elements of recovery participation in that recovery by friends, family, and loved ones?
A great question. And I think limited really, it's again, sort of what Cara was talking about with discharge planning. Discharge planning starts at admission. Treatment planning starts upon admission as well, though. And so really visitations will be individualized. The frequency will be in duration that makes sense to that person, while also keeping in mind that an individual here is civilly committed for treatment interventions, and that needs to really be one of the things that's focused on is somebody looking at their own recovery initially. Also taking into account the safety and security of the entire facility. So again, the milieu, there's 16 potential individuals in the facility. And so the fact is all of that has to be taken into account on a daily basis and really looked at as far as what's going to aid in that individual's recovery and what's going on in the milieu on that day.
Great, thank you. And then this next question is for Keith, and it says, it seems like this has been in the works for a long time. Why is the public being brought in so late? It seems like it's a done deal and we don't really have any real opportunity to redirect. What are your thoughts, Keith?
Okay, so just to clarify, I'm not sure, there may have been an incorrect year noted earlier. So 2021 is when this site was identified, and the last 8 or 9 months have been through that feasibility process. We're now in the conditional use permitting process. And so, following that process, this engagement, the notifications as required by the county's process, which we're subject to, as is everybody in the neighborhood that wants to do something with their property, but guided by the zoning regulations, that's exactly what we're doing. And I just wanted to, so that addressed, it just skipped off my screen. So we'll have to come back to that one when we get to it.
Oh.
I was going to tie in a couple, but it flipped off my screen. So.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's all right. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Then we'll switch gears just a little bit. And this question is for Brian. And this individual says, I am in support, but am worried that individuals will not have placement plans and support after. I think that's after discharge. I want to make sure that the state is committed to ensuring that individuals have housing after treatment. Great question.
It is a great question. And one of our primary goals is to get people back into their communities. And so discharge planning really starts even before the person is admitted in the facility. We identify where their home community is, where they might be returning to, and then work diligently to make sure that they have appropriate and secure placement in their home community. It is possible, of course, that may not happen, but in the vast majority of cases, that will be the outcome. So
great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And this next question is for Keith, and it's regarding security. Will there be walls built up for security toward 300th and 80th, or are they needed?
So the current plans of the facility, and there's been no discussion about building walls along the streets. The actual requirements for security include some of the exterior areas. And let's loop Jim in on that. He's been working on that design. So let's see if Jim can help us address what the actual barriers, if you will, are.
hang on, I'm just.
You got us on pins and needles, Jim.
I know, we're waiting. Our breath is held. So you can.
See, can you hear me?
Yep.
There you go. We got
it. I was sorry, I just got this thing minimized somehow. So let's see. So could you repeat the question?
Yeah. So Jim, I just wanted to have you describe what the security, physical security, in the outdoor areas are.
Oh, okay. So there's two outdoor areas in the design. One is a covered area that has where the exterior side is screened. So there's no possible way to get, well, it's totally secure. Our larger outdoor area is screened with a 12-foot high fence that has non-climbing surface on it. So that's, you know, those are the only outdoor areas that these the patients have access to.
Right. So back to the original question about walls, there are no security type walls in the facility on the perimeter of the site.
Right. Because there's no, the patients aren't roaming the property. So there's no need for that.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Jim.
Melissa?
Great. So the next question is about comorbidity issues, and it's for Carrie. And the question says, what about comorbidity issues? Are there going to be SUD services? Great question.
Great question. Good thing for us to bring up again, I think, is this is going to be primarily a mental health facility. If someone does come in, though, with a substance use disorder, that's something that we anticipate being able to address. So someone with a co-occurring disorder is something that we would be able to address. This is not a drug and alcohol facility, meaning a primary diagnosis for substance use disorder needing inpatient residential treatment facilities. That is not what this facility will be.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and then I believe we had a question earlier. I thought it was answered, but maybe it wasn't. And it's for Evan, and it's what constitutes adequate disposal of pre-treated sewer discharge, and how will your drainage issues be handled? And if we already answered it, then forgive me.
Yeah, I believe we answered that one.
Okay, great, perfect. All right. So then this next question is going to go to Julie. And the question asks, will visitors be screened to prevent the introduction of weapons or contraband into the facility? Another great question.
Yeah, very good question. So I also have experience as a director of a facility that is very similar to this facility, but in a different county. So I'm speaking from my experience within that facility. Within that facility, visitors were screened using a metal detector, and they were also required to lock up items that would be considered contraband, you know, like cell phones, wallets, those types of things.
Great. Thank you, Julie. So then this next question is it's about security, and it's for Jim. And the question says, aren't both outdoor areas surrounded by non-scalable fences?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we should clarify. So there are two buildings in the CUP. We're only currently working on the construction of one. The second phase has not been funded yet, but each building has a secure outdoor area that is open to the sky, but it's surrounded by the 12-foot fence. In addition, there is a covered patio that is enclosed with a screen. So there are two large outdoor areas in the project. And both projects have a patio area that is enclosed with a roof and a screen.
Great, thank you. That's great. So this next question, I'll go ahead and answer. It's regarding the email address for the website listed. So the email that we do have a Snohomish County We have two things. We have an email where if you have questions about the Snohomish County facility, you can email snohomishRTF@hca.wa.gov. And you can also visit the community facility treatment page as well. And the fact sheet is also going to be there. I believe I'm 100% sure that you will be mailed copies of these slides after this webinar, after this town hall is done. And so you can just click on the links and you will go directly to the fact sheet. You will go directly to the community-based treatment facility webpage. And there you can sign up to keep receiving updates about communication. And that's just a great place to kind of check out to find out what we're doing. Okay, so let's go back to more questions on the page. Great. Okay, so Keith, would you mind kind of explaining how this facility is different from the Smokey Point facility?
I'm waiting for my video. There we go.
Okay.
Right. So I'd like to loop some HCA folks in on this because I am not the medical expert here, treatment expert, but I think there is a significant difference, and that's what I wanted to highlight between what the services the Smokey Point facility provides and what this facility provides. So sorry, I was trying to prompt.
That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Great. Okay, and I'm just looking for more questions in the chat. And again, if you have questions that you want to email after this is done, you can email snohomishrtf@hca.wa.gov. Okay, and all right. So then for our next question, the question is for Keith, and the question asks, when is the public hearing scheduled? Also, there was not a street elevation presented. Can you provide?
So my video catch up. The public hearing, I believe they're talking about the hearing examiner hearing with Snohomish County for the conditional use permit. That hearing is projected to occur in late summer, early fall. That we are subject to the county's process on that, and they schedule that meeting. We don't really have input to that. And then as regarding the elevation from the street, as the design develops, as BCRA and Corsmo advance that along, additional information will become available. I don't know if we'll proceed doing a street elevation, so to speak, but certainly it'll be building elevations. If the hearings examiner needs something to describe what this looks like from a street view, we'll certainly be able to provide that.
Great, thank you. All right. And let me just see. Okay, and we also got to the public hearing one. So this question is for Brian, and the question asks, how are you going to prevent patients from committing crimes?
So as we've mentioned quite a few times, it's a secure facility, so patients don't have free access to leave the facility. And anytime that they would go out onto outings in the community, they'd be escorted with staff.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This next question is for Keith. And Keith, I'm also going to ask you to explain the acronym for CUP, but who makes the decision on the CUP? I just heard there was no opportunity to consider alternative sites.
Fair enough, because I called Jim out on the SEPA, so you get to call me out on
I did it.
Right, exactly. So CUP, C-U-P, is conditional use permit, and that is more broadly, the conditional land use permit, just the L is dropped out of the acronym typically. So that is the first part. And as I was listening to you, I focused on, frankly, that you were calling me out for the same thing I called Jim out. So what was the second part of the question?
The second part is, so this individual heard there was no opportunity to consider alternative sites.
Oh, which we addressed earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we got that one buttoned up.
Okay, great. This next question is for Cara, and the question asks, what happens to a client who meets the qualifications for a 72-hour hold and the facility is full?
Yeah, so right now, this facility, we have it planned for serving people who are much further down the path with having involuntary treatment. So that initial 72-hour detention, which actually it's been expanded recently in the last couple of years to a 5-day detention, those individuals will go to other settings. So other ENTs, community hospitals, those are the beds where a person would be served when they're on that shorter term order. They would be coming to this facility at the point with which they've been given a 90 or 180-day order. So the people coming to this facility are going to be coming from other treatment facilities who have had them for the shorter term orders.
Great, thank you.
Melissa, this is Keith.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that rendering and thinking about some of the questions, and I actually think it would be good to have that done. I think it's a good suggestion, because this facility it's not a jail, it's not a prison, and it is being designed to speak the same language lexicon of the residential rural community. So I think that actually is a good comment, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks. Okay, so this question is, again, this is for Julie, and this is regarding safety. And so the question is asking, so they don't walk out at the front door, they don't leave on foot. This won't be happening. Kind of, can you explain why that won't be happening? And then the question goes on to say, similar facilities across the Pacific Northwest region have experienced resident housing leakage or elopement when released. And then those residents tend to camp in neighboring woods, and there's a lot of woods around this facility. So basically, can you, Julie, and you kind of addressed this previously, but can you talk a little bit more about elopement, how that won't happen? What are some of the safety pieces in place?
Sure. So I'll first speak to the discharge piece of this. So individuals, when they're discharged, will have prearranged transportation. So this means that they won't just be, walking out the door and walking down the street. There are social workers, case managers who work very closely with the individuals, their resources, to ensure that they have transportation. This is a very big piece of any discharge plan. As far as elopement, I know there's been a number of security measures that have been mentioned. And we've also mentioned that this is, a very rare thing to happen. So I just want to highlight that. Many of the exits, the main exits, require actually a two-process access. So that means a card and also a PIN pad code to prevent elopements specifically. In the event that an elopement does occur, the facility will have procedures in place. Those policies haven't been written for this specific facility. However, I can speak from my experience at a facility similar to this. If an individual were to elope, staff would pursue the individual. There would also be other staff members contacting law enforcement to get some support in case they're not able to, bring that individual safely back into the facility. And at that point, if they were unable to locate that individual, if they were unable to bring that individual back into the facility right away, they would coordinate with law enforcement on the search efforts.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And this question is regarding wells, and it's for Evan. And the question asks, what are your plans for a well? Wells dry up in this area in summer for some residents. People can't dig new wells in this area. How does the conditional use permit address that issue? Great question.
Yeah, so similarly to the septic system, we are currently going through the feasibility stage of the wells and and the site location of the well to have the proper setbacks from all the structures and any impervious surfaces. So we've had one initial meeting with the Department of Health, and we have a follow-up meeting here next week, and we should know more soon to be able to address these questions.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and so the next question is, this is for Julie Brown again, and you've kind of addressed it, Julie. I'm going to ask it anyways, and if you have anything to add, that's great. And the question asks, what will be the procedure if someone departs the facility without authorization?
I think I did answer this question in my previous experience regarding elopements.
Okay, great. Okay, and okay, so the next question is actually asking about the slides, and the slides will be sent out to everybody who is on this call. And all you'll have to do then is you can click on the link. This is, I'm just sharing my screen. This is what the page looks like. So we'll have news and updates. These slides will be posted here. And this is where you can go. This is where the fact sheet lives. That's updated. As soon as we know more, we update it. So I just thought I would click on that link and show you all of that. Okay, let me just pull my slides up really quick. And so yes, just clicking on that will take you there. Okay, so then our next question is from, let me just go down here. And so this question is regarding discharge, and it is for Carrie. And the question asks, what happens when a patient does not have any place to go? Like if they were homeless or don't have friends or family?
Sure. Thank you. This is a great question. Both healthcare authority and other avenues, meaning local housing jurisdictions, we all partner through the discharge planning process to figure out if somebody needs a housing voucher, short-term housing, and how that can be connected and hooked up as part of an individual's discharge plan. So every effort is made to identify if somebody has friends, family, or their own home to go back to. But we also do have an ability to offer short-term housing and longer-term housing as we help to find somebody their own place in the community.
Great, thank you, Carrie. This next question is for Keith, and it's regarding the conditional use permit. And the question asks, doesn't conditional use take into account whether the proposed use is congruent to surrounding properties? And then there's actually like a few follow-up, but I'll let you answer that one first.
Okay. So the conditional use is a prescribed process by Snohomish County, like other jurisdictions. And it is following the regulatory process as required by the zoning regulations. Part of that consideration is what is an allowed use and what's an allowed use by exception or by condition, excuse me. And that's the category we're in right now for this facility on this site. And the process we're going through in those regulations that are available from Snohomish County actually describe it in detail and what is and what is not considered in the hearing examiner's process.
Okay, great. So as a follow-up to that is the question asks, what will it take to expand the 16-bed unit into the future 48-bed units?
Well, as you can look at the property right now, it's designed for two facilities, two buildings, if you will, I'm sorry. If it were ever considered to add the third building, my belief, based on today, not knowing what might happen in the future with regulations and requirements, is that an additional land use permitting process would need to be implemented and gone through. to make that third facility a viable, or to try to stand that up, I guess would be the better way to say that.
Great. Thank you.
While we're here,
Yeah.
since you got me, is there any other follow-ups in that specific line that you had?
Not in that specific line, no. I mean, I'm sure there will be follow-up in some way, but I don't see anything off the top of my head.
That's
Actually,
fine.
here's a good one. Here's an interesting one. This is a great one. This is about property taxes. So will this location pay property taxes? The tribe currently does not pay property taxes.
So I am not a tax attorney, so let's just say that right now. But as the ownership of the property will not change, the property itself, that would not change, I believe. And to the improvements on the property, that would be, owned by the state. And as I understand, the state does not pay local taxes, but I'm not sure about that. And I'm going to now turn around and clarify on myself. So actually the tribe is paying taxes on that property. That is owned in fee by the tribe. So property taxes are being paid and will continue to be paid as that is. So,
Great. Thank you. There was a question earlier about how to access the recording. And so I think I don't think I've been really clear about how this will work. So everybody who signed up for this meeting had to put their email in. And so a copy of these slides will be emailed to you. And when you get these slides, all of these links are active and you can click on these links, and the recording of this town hall will be here on the community-based treatment facility webpage. And the fact sheet, if you just want to skip and read that, will be there. And then if you have follow-up questions or you want to reach out, you can always email us at this email here. So I think I haven't been super clear about that. I hope that makes more sense. Okay, so let's find another great question.
While you're looking, Melissa, I'd like to go ahead and address the tribal member preference question, if you don't mind. So effectively that question was, does a member of the Tulalip tribe have preference for use of the facility? So give a little context here. There's never been a Tulalip member that I'm aware of that's been civilly committed, gone through this process. In the event in the future that were to happen and there is a bed available, and there's two people, a Tulalip tribe member and a non-Tulalip tribe person needing the service at the same time, in that situation, the Tulalip member would have the preference for that bed. And that is the condition, as we understand it, of the compact, to what that tribal preference, Tulalip tribal preference member preference means. So,
yeah, thanks, Keith.
Yep.
That's really helpful. I have another question for Julie, and this is regarding safety of the facility. And the question asks, I understand there will be no armed guards, and if a patient wants to leave, they plan to try to reason with them to talk them out of leaving. Is this true?
So there will be no armed guards. Staff within the facility will be trained in de-escalation techniques. So this is verbal de-escalation, but this is also physical de-escalation. So the staff will be trained to become physical with an individual if they are making attempts to harm themselves or others. And that also includes pharmacological restraint and physical restraint, so medications to help them calm down, and also resources like a restraint bed or chair and a seclusion room if it comes to that level of violence, where that level of intervention is needed to keep an individual safe. I think you're muted, Melissa.
I am muted. Thank you. See, we all do it. Everybody. So this next question is a follow-up of the prior one for Julie, and it just asks, what will be the procedure if someone departs the facility without authorization?
Thanks, Melissa. I got comment that I wasn't able to be heard, so hopefully you can hear me now.
It's better.
Okay, great. So I think I highlighted this in one of my previous responses. The policies for elopement are not developed yet for this facility. However, I have experience in a facility similar to this, and individuals typically at that point are pursued by staff. And at that point, if staff are not able to bring that individual safely back into the facility, law enforcement will coordinate with the staff to bring that individual safely return to the facility.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This next question is for Keith, and the question asks, how is the facility deemed similar to rural, agricultural, private homes surrounding the property?
So I don't know that similar is the right comparison or measure to use in considering that question. I think the better way to look at this is from the zoning regulations, is it allowable use among the other uses? Like the other commercial properties, or not like, but there are other commercial properties in the area. Does it comply with those regulations, which as property owners in the area, everybody's subject to? So I think that is the better way to look at that question in a more appropriate manner or more holistic manner, instead of, is it similar? Is it allowed? Is the real question there.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, as the conditional use, it is an allowed conditional use. Great,
thank you. And then this next question is for Brian, and the question is regarding kind of the type of patients. What percentage of people will be suicidal in other facilities? This facility is far from hospitals where every minute may count. That's a great question.
It is a great question. And, we talk a lot about safety, and keeping people safe from harming themselves is one of the things that we really work hard to do. And in facilities like this, if someone's at a high risk for harming themselves, we will keep staff on them to keep them safe, adjust medications, provide talk therapy and support to help the patient stabilize to the point where they no longer feel suicidal. And we also have monitoring and monitor the facility for safety checks to ensure that patients haven't harmed themselves or had a major medical problem.
Great. Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Brian. This next question puts the spotlight on Keith again, and the question asks, are you submitting for building permit prior to receiving conditional use permit approval?
So as allowed by the county, we are submitting, and those processes will run concurrently. Yes.
Great, thank you. And this next question is for Carrie, and so I want everyone to kind of think back a few questions ago where a question was asked regarding discharging patients that don't have a support system outside of the facility. And so this is for Carrie, and it asks, is the transitional housing, if the client doesn't have support that was just mentioned, proposed for this site?
It is not. This site is a 16-bed evaluation and treatment facility for individuals who are on a 90 or 180-day order. That is what it is. I was offering the information on transitional housing just in responses to the services that Healthcare Authority and our other sibling agencies provide to individuals.
Great, thank you. All right. And so then I do want to switch gears a little bit. This is not a question, but we do have another support. And the support is that there is a facility nearby. Smokey Point is a behavioral health hospital, which does evaluation treatment, involuntary treatment, and voluntary treatment. Yeah, I think that in some, this person wants to just convey that this facility is needed, and they approve of it. Okay, and then we have done that one. And so we'll just scroll down and bear with me, everyone. All right. Like I said before, these will be, oh, here we go. Okay, so this question is for Julie. And this is a great question that we actually haven't really talked about yet, and it involves transportation. So prior to their admissions, what kind of transportation will be used for patient discharge that are on Medicaid? The location of this facility is concerning regarding patient discharge.
So I think what this individual is asking is about transportation at discharge. So they specifically mentioned Medicaid. For an individual who has Medicaid, there is a service called paratransit that is available for medical transport. That's also available for them when they're in the community. So that's a great resource, as well as discharge from a facility like this. If someone doesn't have Medicaid, the facility would work to coordinate transportation for them. And that could be through a variety of different means.
Great, thank you. And this next question is about the property, and it's for Jim. And the question asks, there is currently a stream traversing the property. What effect will your septic and drainage systems and your paved areas have on the wetland, standing water, and marshy places in the area?
Yes, so that's a good question. So on the property, there is a wetland, and we've hired a consultant, and the consultant has flagged the boundaries of the wetland. And then the county has required setbacks, which is called the buffer area from the wetland. And so the project complies with all those setbacks. So the septic drain field is not in the wetland. It's some distance away. And then as far as drainage, I can't remember if we talked about this or not, but there is a large, we're installing a large storm drainage tank underneath the parking. So it's going to collect the runoff from the buildings and the parking and the development. And then it will slowly release it back, into the wetland. And this complies with the county requirements, so that the development, basically will match the pre-development conditions. It's one of the requirements. So that's the way the storm system is designed. It treats the water, and then it re-releases it, into the aquifer that currently exists.
Great, thank you, Jim. Okay, any other questions? You can go ahead and just click on your Menti and the link, and then ask your questions through Menti, and they will pop up, and we will answer them in the best way that we can. If we don't get to all of the questions this evening, then we will reach out with you if you have a specific in mind that you want, or we will also update our fact sheet. This is a great way for you to learn about what's happening with this facility. This is a great way for us to know what you want to know about this facility, so that we can keep that fact sheet and that website and webpage useful for you, because that's really supposed to be a tool to help you. Okay, so we're just waiting for some more questions to come in. And so feel free to make yourself comfortable. This has been a long meeting. I do have to just express my appreciation to all of you that have been on this meeting for an hour and a half now. and have stuck with it and have asked your questions. We really appreciate you. And, we do want to continue keeping this dialogue going and keeping the information coming to you.
Melissa, one question I wanted to address.
Yeah, go for it.
Mind. So there is within some of the project information mention of the Tribal Centric Behavioral Health Advisory Board, and just and the potential that they could operate the facility. So just from an education information standpoint, which is what we're doing here. So they were involved in the discussion, and actually Tulalip didn't bring them to the table. It was a different entity that brought them to the table. And there was an expressed interest, but the needs between what this facility is going to provide and what that advisory board needs did not align. So the Phase 1 facility does not involve the Tribal Centric Behavioral Health Advisory Board. So just button that one up if that's a question out there in folks' minds.
Thanks, Keith. I'm sure there are many questions, and that's really helpful. Thank you. We do have another question, and this one is for Tyler. And the question says, a similar 16-bed facility is under construction in Thurston County. A similar 48-bed facility has been designed for Clark County, pending permits. So Tyler, are you able to sort of expand on that?
Yeah, no, I wanted to just circle back, because I think one of the questions that was earlier in the chat was asking if there's any similar facilities like this throughout the state, throughout the county. And I think someone even mentioned King County, and I wanted to highlight the couple of facilities that we do have. The one in Thurston County in Rochester, that's Maple Lane. That's kicked off in, I believe, late 2021, the construction there. That's going to be a 16-bed residential treatment facility. We also have a similar 48-bed facility that is in the permitting process in Clark County, down in Vancouver. So the state is building these facilities, and HCA is our partner for 2 of the 3 buildings at the 48-bed facility in Clark County. So we are new to this, but these are ongoing projects on the same track, all with the same intent to serve patients in their community.
Great, thank you, Tyler. Okay, so I am actually going to just pick on, I'm going to pick on Kara. So the question asks, the figure of only 6 beds in Snohomish is misleading. More than 6 beds are available. Why is HCA only leasing 6 beds?
So it's correct. I mean, there are more beds available. What we have under contract right now are the 6 beds. For the past 3 years, we've been reaching out and trying to recruit more beds for the program, and we continue to do so. And in addition to contracting with facilities for their existing capacity, we've also partnered with the Department of Commerce, who received capital dollars to help bring up new facilities. I think one thing to keep in mind, at least I know that we're mindful when we're trying to contract with existing mental health facilities for their beds, we end up in a situation where we end up shortchanging the short-term capacity, meaning we end up losing beds for the people who are on those short-term 72-hour, 5-day initial detentions, and then they get stuck in ERs. And so it's really kind of a balancing act. We need to bring up more capacity, more beds within the state, because otherwise we don't have a good flow through in the system. So yes, we have 6 right now. We have more that should be coming online. It's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kara. This question is for Evan, and it's regarding the aquifer system that is in the facility. What aquifer system are you tapping into, and what impact does that carry?
Yeah, so at this time, we just don't have enough information on this. We are hiring a hydrogeologist, and we still are working on placing the well system. So we should know more here in the next few weeks to month, and we'd be happy to follow up with you in regards to these questions. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and then it looks like we had a clarification from Bob. I'm going to butcher your name, Bob, and I apologize ahead of time. Bob Hubenthal from DSHS, and he asks, he says, a clarification, we seek a conditional use permit for a 32-bed facility on this site, though available funding only covers construction of 16 beds in phase 1. Thank you, Bob. That's helpful. All right. And here we go. So this question is for Julie, and the question asks, let me just find it. So Julie, can you talk a little bit more about the Involuntary Treatment Acts and what that is and how that is related to this facility?
Sorry about that lag.
No.
So the Involuntary Treatment Act, yes. So kind of as we mentioned earlier, individuals who are coming to this facility are on 90 or 180-day orders for treatment. Individuals are experiencing a mental health disorder that has caused them to be unable to take care of themselves, which we refer to as grave disability, or a danger to themselves. Often we see this as a suicide attempt, potentially, or a danger to others. Typically, this occurs when individuals have such severe symptoms that they're not able to tell reality from something that might be a hallucination or delusion, for example. So those are the individuals that are served typically under the ITA law.
Great, great. Okay, so all questions are welcome. Go ahead and use your Mentimeter to click on your Mentimeter and type in your questions. All right, so this next question is going to go to Keith, and it is asking about the intake areas, and the question asks, have they changed the intake area so that visitors and new patients will not be entering into the same lobby?
So there are a couple questions in here. One is also speaking to the seclusion rooms. And just from a status standpoint, that's how I wanted to address this more than the actual design is. So we are currently moving through design development, which is kind of the mid phase of design, working with HCA, and based on the model that was created for the other two facilities with DSHS. And that if HCA were to, foresee a need, then we could explore that through the design process. Obviously, somebody that's asking that question is pretty detailed and intimate into the plans themselves to understand that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, and so then this next question is actually, it's related to the traffic. And I am going to, I'm going to put Evan on the spot, and Keith, if you want to hop in there. This question is really wanting us to answer when people leave the facility and they can only turn right and they have to go another direction, where are they going to turn around? How does that work? Do you know if it's good? How do you even know the question to that yet?
All right. So the restriction of a right turn only is, I think Jim could actually probably weigh in on this too. It's, there's a hill with a limited sight distance as you come over that hill. If you were to exit the property turning left, then you would potentially be surprising somebody coming over that hill. So that is, as I understand it, the reason for the right turn only. Okay. As far as somebody needing to go further east to make the U-turn, that is a good question. And no, I don't know the area well enough to know where the next left or right turn could take you around the country block, so to speak. The primary flow of traffic, I don't know if it would do that, but that's a consideration that we need to think about in that traffic planning. So again, that's kind of feedback I like to hear, and good comments, good questions. So
yeah,
something we need to address. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and so this, I believe Cara or Julie, both of you could probably address this, and I think you've talked about it before, but maybe not this specific. So Cara, Julie, I'm going to ask you both to just weigh in the best that you can. With 16 patients in the facility, how many trained staff will there be on site? Do you know that yet? And maybe the answer is you don't know yet.
Yeah, I don't think we know that yet. I mean, I think this would be part of the process. And Julie, it would be great if you could weigh in from your experience for the facility that you worked in. But, you know, we haven't issued a request for proposals yet to look at designs. I mean, I think an adequate staffing pattern is going to be one of the things that we would be looking at to make sure that we're contracting with a provider who really is going to ensure that safety and treatment are well prepared for.
As Cara mentioned, oh, I'm sorry, Melissa.
Oh, go ahead.
Just as Cara mentioned, we don't have the specific programmatic standards for this facility yet. Those are going to be determined with who is contracted to provide the services. However, I can speak from my experience. Typically, there are at least 10 to 15, I would say 10 staff there if you're looking at overnight shifts. So that's the lowest number that you're looking at. Typically, you have about 4 to 5 staff actually on the unit with the clients or with the patients. And then you have medical staff, other treatment team staff that might come off and on the treatment space. And then you have support staff in addition to that, as well as supervisors, management staff, those types of things. So the staffing pattern is very robust.
Great. Thank you. And then Brian, I would just like can you explain and clarify the initial 120-hour hold and what that means and the role of a designated crisis responder? Just can you kind of go through that process for us? I think that would be really helpful in this meeting.
Sure. And I think there was a question from the community member that mentioned a 72-hour hold. And that used to be the old law. The laws around civil commitment were changed, and it was extended to 120 hours, not including weekends and holidays. So if an individual is in a behavioral health crisis, so danger to themselves, danger to others, or unable to take care of themselves, which is called grave disability, they're assessed by a designated crisis responder in the community. And then once they have an initial detention, they go to typically an evaluation and treatment facility. Those can be freestanding facilities like Smokey Point, or they can be in a hospital like Skagit Valley Hospital, which has an adjacent ENT that's attached to the hospital. They will then have treatment for up to 120 hours. And during that period of time, the mental health professionals will treat the patient and then evaluate whether they are still in crisis and need additional treatment. If they believe that, then they'll get a petition. Then it goes before a commissioner. The commissioner hears the arguments and then makes a decision of whether the person needs additional treatment. At that time, they'll get a 14-day order, which they will continue in an evaluation and treatment facility. If at the end of that 14-day order, the individual still is not stable enough for discharge and the court believes that further hospitalization is in their best interest, then they will receive a 90-day court order. It's at that time that they would then be eligible for this kind of facility. And it represents then a continuum of care, because we have evaluation and treatment facilities in the community, but having these 90 and 180-day facilities allows the patients to transition out of the evaluation and treatment facility and into a 90-day facility, or 90 or 180-day facility, and thus allows more patients to be seen in that acute care setting.
Great, thank you. I think that's really helpful. So I have two questions for you, Keith. And one of them is regarding community. And the first question says, if family and community are so important, why put the facility way out here instead of putting it on tribal lands?
So I wanted to address this from the tribal land standpoint because of it sounds like to me the person asking this question thinks that this facility is focused on tribal use. That is not the case. So, citing it on tribal lands actually is counter to that. It won't serve the tribal members. Talked a little bit about that earlier in that preference discussion and what that meant. So just to clarify, this is not serving the tribal community exclusively, and it's not anticipated that it would be serving the Tulalip membership in a significant way. Very unlikely at this point. Yeah, I thought there was a second question there, kind of along those lines.
Yeah, there is actually, and so this next one is sort of related to that one. So this question asks, could someone address the reason of site choice and its relation to the settlement regarding taxes at Kilcetta Village between Tulalip Tribe and the state and county?
Yeah. So yes, that what's referenced there is the compact that I referenced earlier, and that settlement. And as a result of that settlement, the Tulalip tribes needed to find a site. And as I've described, we looked in what was available, what would meet the needs, and what did align. And this site does have a conditional allowed use for this facility. And there were some other questions in there about Snohomish County's designation of farmland. Excuse me. And again, we're going through this conditional use permit to address those, or permit process to address those very items. And as that conditional use is allowed by the regulations, that's how we find ourselves at the site.
Great, thank you. All right, and this next question is for Cara, and it's about evaluation and treatment centers in the state. Cara, can HCA speak to the fact that there are many ENTs, evaluation and treatment centers, throughout the state? There is not a new model for the state, it is for DSHS.
Correct. Yes. No, Washington State has had evaluation and treatment facilities operating within it for, gosh, I'm not even sure, decades, I would say. I'm looking at a listing of them that we have, and there's at least 26 ENTs across the state. Some of them are specialized to serve youth, but we do have them in many communities, and they've been operating for quite some time. So it is a model that we're very familiar with. And that's what we're intending this facility to be.
Great, thank you. All right, let's see. Let me just find a new, here we go. So this question is for Jim. And the question says, I may have missed seeing a kitchen in the plan. Is food prepared on site or brought into the facility?
So the project contains what's called a reheat kitchen. So the food is prepared off site, and it's then transported to the facility, and then it's reheated at mealtime. It's usually frozen. So there is a kitchen, but it's not a full service kitchen. See, and while I've got the mic, I did want to address. There was a question about, so the traffic study refers to 270 trips that are generated by the project. So that is both buildings, and that would equate to, so a trip is like coming and going. So that's 135 cars. So coming to the site and leaving the site on a daily basis with both buildings operating. And currently this, our scope of work right now is to get the CUP for both buildings, but only the first phase is currently funded.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Again, you'll be emailed the slides after this meeting today, and then you will be able to go in and click on the link for the webpage. You will also be able to email, and you will also be able to read and keep our fact sheet updated. Okay, and this is a great question. So this is for Julie, and the question is asking if we can address the traffic based on reheat kitchen and linen service.
Sure. So again, I'm answering this based on my experience. In terms of meal delivery, usually there is 1 to 2 trips to deliver food per week. And then linen service also comes to the facility once per week for drop off of clean linen and pickup of soiled linen.
Great, great. Thank you. Okay, more questions? Again, if we can't end up, we have 10 minutes left, and just to stay true to our time and to respect everybody's time, if we can't get to every single question, we will be updating the fact sheets. We will have these questions down, so we will know the best way to update our fact sheets with this information. So please visit our webpage and read the fact sheet as it continues to be updated with what you guys want to know. And we are all in this process together. So we all really appreciate you taking the time to attend this town hall tonight. Okay. And I don't know if we actually know the answer to this. I'm just going to ask you, Keith, and then Carrie, if you want to step in, you can. Will Providence be used in a medical emergency for patients who are admitted?
I am going to defer that one to Carrie, as that's an operational type question, and I think we addressed, Julie had addressed, I think it was Julie, some questions earlier about that and future agreements.
Yeah, I think the thanks, Keith. Short answer, and hearkening back to Julie's response. Patients are medically cleared. We don't know exactly the hospital that we're going to be using right away, but that answer remains the same. So thank you all. And we'll make sure that that answer is in writing with our frequently asked questions, so you can hearken back to it.
Yep, that's great. Thanks, Carrie. This next question is for Keith, and it's about septic systems, my favorite subject. And the question asks, how can you design an accurate septic system when you don't know the number of people?
All right. Again, apparently my video is lagging. So the design anticipates a level of staffing, a level of patient population, visitors, et cetera. Jim talked about our parking provisions, et cetera. And then, connecting the dots here and what's being stated. I heard Julie talking about, staffing levels and so forth, and they may vary based on different situations, different acuity, so forth. That level of staffing it would be anticipated in the design, and Jim could chime in here, but that design parameter is what we do, is we establish design parameters on our patient population, our staff population, visitors, et cetera, and then design around that. And that is the operational ability of the facility that then HCA will then take on and manage their facility too. So if there's anything anybody wants to contribute to that, please do. And if not, Melissa, there was a question about test case. And I don't know what that means. So if we could get some clarification on that one, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I'll read it again, because I think, this is a really good question. So the question is asking if this area is, quote, a test case or example, then what if it doesn't work? What if all of our worst case scenarios come true, and it doesn't work out as planned, and then you have to close it down or something to that effect happens? The concern is that the neighborhood will have been disrupted, basically, and nobody will have been helped. So do you have an answer to that? How do we know this is going to work?
coming back online here. Okay, so I think there's a feasibility side of this. I think that's talking to, and that's the exercise that we've been going through with our design teams and BCRA, the wetlands consultants, their other sub-consultants, our well exploration, our soils exploration, et cetera, that is all in the process of proving out any facility works on a site, and specifically the site as well. From can this site support the facility, and is it feasible? So once we go through those processes, rely on our professionals and our experienced folks that have done this and lead us through those decisions and anticipating the existing conditions on the site, and the answer to those conditions delivered through the design helps inform us and make sure that we do have a facility that functions well in the environment. Frankly, nobody wants to go spend the money that we're going to spend on this facility and then not have anything at the end of the day, or have a dysfunctional facility. So, you know, that those efforts, the quality control, the back checks, et cetera, that happen during the process are key to making sure that the facility functions and doesn't become a abandoned, non-used facility because it doesn't work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, I'm just looking through these questions. And like I said, there are just your time and your thoughtfulness of how you came up with these is really appreciated. And even if we are not able to get to all of the questions, we will be addressing them in the fact sheet. And you can also email the email, and we will try to answer them the best way that we possibly can. All right, so the next question is for Cara, and the question asks, what is the plan for discharge for these people? How will they be moved from this facility? This worry, this concern, this question comes from that there are gravely disabled patients, and that they will be released with no discharge plan and set loose in neighborhoods. Cara, what can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's clearly not something that we would want to see happen. And I don't know that why that would happen. When individuals are receiving treatment, if somebody was still gravely disabled, that wouldn't be somebody who would be ready for discharge. So, you know, unless they got to the point where they just weren't going to get better, and then we'd be looking for a facility for their discharge planning. So it's not going to be a situation where people are just going to be, you know, told to just walk out the door to no discharge plan. You know, the treatment team within the facility is going to be partnering with treatment teams within the community. We have a lot of different types of programs available that, you know, that help do what we call a warm handoff, that helps matchmake somebody from an inpatient setting to an outpatient setting to ensure that they have their needs met. You know, the discharge plans for people who are on these long-term orders, you know, we call them robust discharge plans. We have a lot of time to plan. You know, these people are receiving a long length of service. So it's not, you know, usually coming to an abrupt end. Looks like Julie might have a thought to share as well.
Sure. There was a question about the potential that someone could be discharged unexpectedly from court due to some issue with legal findings. The individuals in this facility will come to the facility on a 90 or 180 day order. So the length of stay is very long. So this is very unlikely when you're serving a long-term population. This could happen, and it's more common to happen in those short-term stays versus someone who's on a long-term order. So I just wanted to address that.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. We are almost at time, and I just really want to be mindful of everyone's night. But I would like Keith to tell us where you can go to learn more about the history of the settlement with the Tulalip tribe that resulted in the property purchase.
Sure. So that is actually a public document, and it is the compact that I referred to, and that outlines what we're doing here. As far as a So let me work with Tulalip as far as how we can make that available easily for folks.
Great, great. Well, thank you, Keith. It is 7:59, so I'm going to make this so fast. Thank you all. Again, this was 2 hours of your evening. At one point, we had 95 participants. That means that you as a community are engaged and care, and we also are engaged and care. And so we have that in common. Please take a look at the slides when you receive them. Go to the webpage, read our fact sheets, sign up to get email alerts, and we will keep you informed. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to answer these questions. And the question and answer, the Menti will remain open overnight. And so if this ends and you have a burning question, go ahead, and you still have until tomorrow morning to type that in. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and we will talk soon. Thanks.